Okay, so this is the Union divided, the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. This goes with Unit 4, and this is Chapter 12. All right, so we've got the Civil War going on between 1861 and 1865. We've already talked about the main issues over slavery, states' rights. So you have 11 southern states who have ceded to form the Confederacy, and you have the North that's going to be considered called the Union, and they're hoping to fight to preserve the nation. And this is going to lead to massive casualties, the end of slavery, and just a redefining America's identity. So after the initial wave of Southern secession from all the Southern states ceding, the Confederate States of America was officially formed in February 1861, and it's going to have 7 states. President James Buchanan he's still in office at this time. And he's going to declare in December of 1860 that it's illegal to secede from the Union. However, he also made it clear that he would not use any force to bring any of the states who had left the Union back. So Southern leaders interpret this as a sign that Buchanan accepts their independence and he's not going to interfere. When Lincoln is inaugurated in March of 1861, he faces a nation that's on the brink of collapse, right? He's got part of the nation who has left and formed their Confederacy. So he is committed to preserving the Union. He wants to maintain the authority of the federal government, but he also doesn't want to provoke a war. So his strategy, like we talked about before, is kind of wait and see what the South does. Let them make the first move, which that comes in 1861 when the Confederate forces attacked Fort Sumter's in South Carolina. Okay, this is going to be what's called the beginning of the Civil War. All right, so what this map shows you is the deep division within the United States during the Civil War era. So it also is letting you know kind of the complex political and the geographical landscape of the time and what is happening. The blue regions are going to represent the United States or the Union of States that are going to remain loyal to the federal government. The red areas are going to show the Confederate states that want to keep slavery and states' rights, because it's going to be about federal rights or states' rights. And that's your Confederacy. And then the yellow border states like Kentucky and Missouri, they're slaveholding, but they don't want to leave. And this is going to be some critical battlegrounds for loyalty, and it's also going to be strategic. So the black shaded territories, such as Nebraska and New Mexico, were not yet states, but played a role in the broader conflict through resources and kind of political influence. So together, these different regions kind of show you how the war was not simply a North versus South, but it's kind of interconnected, and it's going to really kind of be a contest between loyalties in these emergent territories, and who is fighting and what the definition of the future of the nation will be, what will actually define it. All right, so let's go back to Fort Sumter. We haven't talked specifically about this. So what happens is this is a federal fort, okay, but it's in the southern area, but it's a federal fort. So in 1861, President Buchanan, he just sends 6 unarmed merchant ships to bring supplies to the fort. they supplied the fort. So he's just sending the supplies to the fort, but he's also kind of trying to test the will of the the leaders in South Carolina to see what they're going to do. So in April of 1861, Lincoln sends another ship to the fort with the same mission to supply the fort with the things that it needed. But the government of South Carolina informs the ship that is going to arrive there with no troops that they are interfering with the Confederacy, and they aren't to be delivering stuff. And Jefferson Davis is going to use the Confederate government, and they're going to use this as an opportunity to strike against the Union. So they do strike first. So April 14th of 1861, the Confederate guns are going to be shooting up the fort for 2 days, and then the fort will surrender. So Fort Summerton becomes this flashpoint that kind of ignites the Civil War. So it's located in Charleston Harbor, South Carolina, and it was a federal fort, like I had said, but it's surrounded by states that had already left the Union. So the Confederacy feels that it is their territory. So that kind of is what gets things going. And it's kind of why Fort Sumter is the start of the war. Okay, so reactions. So you have the South. They assumed that more states would join them, and they were going to gain assistance financially from the British and the French. So the South really feels like they're going to secure an early victory. They really feel like they are justified in what they believe, that their state rights have been violated, and they should be able to have slavery for their economy. So Virginia is going to join the South. At this time, Robert E. Lee was a Union soldier. He fought for, well, he never actually fought yet, but he was part of the Union Army. And Virginia is where he's from, and since he's from Virginia, he has to resign from the Union Army because he wants to fight for the Confederate Army because of the location, and that's where his home and his people are from. So the North, their reaction is Lincoln is able to keep the states of the Upper South in the Union, Kentucky, Missouri, Maryland, and Delaware. For the United States, the Civil War is going to be this unprecedented mobilization. So it's going to be considered a total war. A total war is everything: manpower, materials, all part of society. And it involves every aspect of society. So the Civil War is going to be what's called a total war. Like we said, the South really thought that more people would come with them. They're going to have Robert E. Lee, which is going to be a plus for them. What else about this? It's going to be a total war affecting all industries, agriculture. You're going to have a huge loss of life. That's why it is the bloodiest battle of America, the United States, because it's, half the United States against half the United States. And, this is, issues from this war are still talked about today. Okay, let's see. Let's go to the next one. All right, this is just giving you an idea of the different territorial names. You have the North is going to be the Union, the South is going to be the Confederacy. You have the president, you have the Union led by President Abraham Lincoln, you have generals like Grant and Sherman. You have the advantages of it being a banking industry and it has a stronger transportation. You have the North is going to implement a military draft and then later will issue the Emancipation Proclamation, which we'll discuss later. You have for the Confederacy is going to be under President Jefferson Davis. You'll have Robert E. Lee. They're going to be more agricultural based, so they're not going to have the same strengths as what the North does. They're not going to have the same infrastructure. Like we said, the South hopes that more join. They're going to have also a draft to get soldiers. Okay, so the first battle is the Battle of Bull Run. It's going to be July of 1861. This is kind of a wake-up call that this is the real deal, that we are actually at war with each other. So it shatters any illusion that this is going to be a quick conflict. So despite being outnumbered, the Confederate forces are more familiar with the area and more familiar with the terrain. So they're going to defeat the Union Army and send the Northern troops into a chaotic retreat. So many of the civilians from D.C. are going to actually come to watch the battle, expecting a quick Union victory. Instead, they're going to witness a brutal clash that is going to signal kind of we're in for the long haul and it's going to be bloody. So people would actually come out with like their packed lunches and, you know, put out a blanket on a hilltop and watch the battle below. So the next battle is going to be the Battle of Shiloh, and it's going to be April 1862. It's going to be another turning point. So you have Ulysses Grant for the Union Army. He's going to be the general. It's going to be a very hard-fought victory, but it's going to open the door for other major campaigns in this Mississippi Valley area. So it's going to have nearly 24,000 casualties. And Shiloh is tagged the bloodiest battle in the American Civil War and in America up to this point. So it's going to kind of shock the nation, and it's really going to underscore the devastating human cost of this war. So the battle highlights really the importance of battle intelligence. So Grant was caught off guard by a Confederate surprise attack, but he manages to rally his forces and really turn the tide on this battle. So Shiloh proved that the Union was willing to fight hard and long, and it really marks Grant's rising as this military leader who knows how to use aggressive tactics to win a battle. So after this, in September 17th, 1862, we have the Battle of Anaheim. This is going to be the bloodiest single day in the U.S. history, with over 22,000 soldiers killed in one day. It was considered a strategic Union victory. It stopped General Robert E. Lee, his first invasion of the North. They stop it, and Lee is with the Confederacy. And it gives President Abraham Lincoln this momentum that he needs to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. And this is going to reframe the war as a fight not just to preserve the Union, but also to end slavery in the Confederate-held territories. Let's talk about the Emancipation Proclamation for a second. So the thing about this, it's a military order. When you take over a territory from your enemy, so when the North moves and takes over a southern territory, the North gets everything in the territory, all the property. So the horses, the house, the guns, the whatever, okay? So by issuing this Emancipation Proclamation, and slaves are considered property, this is how they're able to take over the slaves and free them. All right, but this is why the amendments are going to be important, because again, this is just a military tactic. So they issue the Emancipation Proclamation, which means that as a military, as we move over and take over the territory and all the property, we are also taking the enslaved people and, of course, freeing them. So this is going to also discourage foreign powers like Britain or France from supporting the Confederacy. Then the next battle you have is the Battle of Gettysburg, which is from July 1st to 3rd, 1863. This is considered a major turning point in the Civil War. So this is considered the high water mark of the Confederacy, okay? It ends Lee's second and most ambitious invasion of the North. So this Union victory came at a huge cost, but it also forced the Confederacy onto more of a defensive for the remainder of the war. So Lee, at this battle, he loses 1/3 of his army, okay? And this is a huge blow to the South, and they never actually recover from it. So for the North, this is going to inspire Lincoln's famous Gettysburg Address, and he's going to deliver it 4 months later at the dedication of the battlefield cemetery. All right, and we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. But he's going to, his Gettysburg Address is going to really emphasize liberty, equality, and of the people, by the people, for the people. Okay, then we have the Battle of Vicksburg. This is going to be fought from May 18th to July 4th, 1863. And this is known as a very strategic, important battle. It's a victory for the Union. It takes place at the same time as the Battle of Gettysburg. Vicksburg gave the Union just complete control of the Mississippi River. And what it does is it actually is going to split the Confederacy into 2 different places, and it's going to cut off their supply lines between the eastern and western Confederate states. So the siege is going to last over 6 weeks, with Union forces under General Grant just surrounding the city and bombarding it until the Confederate troops surrender on Independence Day. So the victory was such a turning point in the war. It not only cripples the Confederacy's ability to coordinate across its territory, but it's also going to really elevate Grant's reputation as just this brilliant military strategist. And so Grant's going to be promoted. He's eventually going to become the commander of all the Union armies. So this was a victory, of course, for the Union, but Vicksburg is going to be very demoralizing to the South, and it's going to be at the same point of a national day of celebration in the North. So as both Vicksburg and Gettysburg, they both marked this major triumph for the Union in July of 1863. But it really signals this shift in momentum that is really going to carry the Union towards just ultimate victory. Okay, let's talk about the Gettysburg Address. First off, it's very fascinating how in 4 months they cleared off one of the most deadliest battlefields to create a stage and make it this really nice place. That's not that long. It seems like a long time, like now, but you didn't have that kind of equipment to make all these graves and clear out all this damage, but they do. So on November 19th, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln, he's going to deliver one of his famous speeches called the Gettysburg Address. and it's in dedication to the Gettysburg Cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So, like we talked about, this battle just a few months earlier really was the turning point of the Civil War. So, in less than 300 words, and there's no microphones, he's having to really use his voice to carry across. Lincoln captures just this essence of the American experiment, just this redefine the purpose of the war. So he reinvokes the founding principles of liberty and equality. He discusses basically what our original Constitution is about. He states that the nation was conceived in liberty and dedication to all men are created equal, which you know all that is stolen from John Locke, plagiarism. So he frames the Civil War not just as this struggle to preserve the Union, but just as this test of whether a nation can be built on such ideas as this. So the speech really emphasizes this importance of honoring the fallen by continuing their fight for freedom. And he's, his goal, of course, is unity. So his closing line that's very famous discusses how the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. So this still remains one of the core democratic values. So the Gettysburg Address is really known as just having a very clear moral, uplifting idea. And this shifts public perception of the war from this political conflict to this profound moral crusade. And these words and these speeches are, iconic in American history. All right, so the assassination of President Lincoln. This is on April 14th, 1865. And this, of course, is going to be a blow to the nation. And we were just beginning to heal from the Civil War. So Lincoln is shot by John Wilkes Booth. He's a well-known actor, and he's very passionate for the Confederacy, and he's a Confederate sympathizer. So while Lincoln's attending a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., he's attacked and he's shot. And the attack occurs just 5 days after General Robert E. Lee for the Confederacy surrenders at the Appomattox Courthouse. So this signals the end of the war. Booth, though, however, believed that the fight for the South was not over, and he thought that they were still fighting, and he hopes that Lincoln's death would, reunite the Confederate cause, that would, spark them to start, really fighting. So after the assassination, Booth fled, and they have a massive manhunt. Lincoln dies, of course, and he's found 12 days later hiding in a barn in Virginia. So the Union is going to set the barn on fire, and Booth is going to attempt to escape, and then he's going to be shot in the neck, and he's going to die after that. But Lincoln's death came at such a time when there really wasn't much healing yet. The country was just coming back together. But it's going to just plunge the country into this mourning, sad period, and it's going to leave a huge impact on American history because his assassination is going to affect Reconstruction, stuff they had already started. His successor, Andrew Johnson, he's gonna lack Lincoln's vision and a lot of Lincoln's political skills. So this is going to be an issue, trying to reunite the nation, trying to secure the rights needed for people who were enslaved to remain free.